1. And we are here today with Yasmin Patel, Rita Patel, and Aasiya Bora. Now, before they come onto the show, as always, I would like to thank the producers and the team at Ramadan FM, all my audience, my guests, the listeners, the viewers, and also my guests for coming on the show who make today what it will be. If you do have any questions about today's show, then please do put them on Facebook on Ramadan FM. I'm sure a quick Google search and you'll be on our Facebook page in no time. So Yasmin Patel is Secretary of Federation of Muslim Organisation, otherwise known as FMO. Rita Patel is Councillor for Rushy Mead Ward. And we also have a last-minute addition who's not on our poster that's been circulated, which is Aasiya Bora, who's a Green Party candidate, and she's standing in the upcoming election for North Evington. So what I'm going to now do is introduce or allow each guest to say who they are. So Yasmin, if you could please introduce yourself for a couple of lines as to who you are and what you do.
Sorry, thank you, Zainab. It's Yasmin Surti, by the way.
What did I say? Yasmin Patel. I'm
Patel.
so sorry. Apologies.
Not at all. So my name is Yasmin Surti. I'm the Secretary of the Federation of Muslim Organisations, and glad to be on your show today.
Minus the little hiccup with the surname. I'm ever so sorry there.
It's okay.
Rita, could you please introduce yourself? And I know I've got your surname right. Please tell me I have.
You have. But Yasmin's a sister of mine anyway, so Patel goes fine. I'm Rita Patel. I'm a councillor for Rushy Mead Ward, as you've said, and I've been a councillor for the last, since 2011, so last 11 years.
So quite a while then. And lastly, we have Aasiya. Please, Aasiya, introduce yourself.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. So I'm a teacher. I'm a local teacher. I'm a mum. I'm a Green Party member and most recently a Green Party candidate for the elections coming up in 10 days' time.
I will wish you good luck in advance.
Thank you very much.
Right. So today's show, before I start, I do want to say we're not going to enter into blame game. It's not going to be controversial. My show is all about debunking the myths out there, breaking those stereotypes, people who are inspirational, and certain topics that need to be brought into the public's light that most people don't like talking about. So today's show is going to cover, in as much light as possible and transparency, the recent violence that has ensued in Leicester. Now, before I start, I do want to highlight that I myself am a northerner, born and brought up in Bolton. However, I've lived in Leicester a lot longer than the amount of time I lived in Bolton. So I've been in Leicester 21 or so plus years. So I class myself as a Leicesterner, and this is actually something that irritates my brothers because they constantly say to me, you're a northerner, you can't forget your northern roots. But I live here, I breathe the air of Leicester, I drink the water of Leicester, and so on and so forth. My kids are born and brought up here. And one thing I can say with absolute certainty is that in every area that I've lived in the 22 odd years I've been in Leicester, I've never seen anything like this before. We've all lived in peace and harmony. We have done so for many years before, and I hope we can do so for many more years to come. So what has happened, I am proud to say it's not the norm, and it will not be the norm. It will never be the norm. So for those who do have the idea that Leicester is not a safe place, we can't come to Leicester, we can't roam around in Leicester, please do take that out of your mind. Leicester is, with all things taken into consideration, a very safe place, a very nice cultural city to visit. So now that I've got that piece of housekeeping out of the way, let's move on. So Rita, you've already mentioned that you've been a councillor for Rushy Mead for 11 years. I take it then you have different walks of life in your constituency. So you've got Muslims, Hindus, Christians, and so on. How has this affected your ward so far with everything that's happened?
Well, some of the activity that kicked off after the cricket match was in my ward, so I was involved right from that point onwards. I have to say, the majority of people in Leicester, whatever communities they come from, whatever faith, seem to be quite resilient and, really believe in the oneness and are getting on with their lives. I think the elderly people, women, young children, they have been affected by it. They are frightened to go out. I've also had projects who deal with mental health issues telling me that women that they worked with to help them get out of the house and feel more confident have gone backwards in terms of their progress because they're frightened of what's happened. And people are often frightened because they fear the potential of stuff kicking off again, rather than fearing fear just coming from what's already happened, I think.
And it being so soon after COVID as well, a lot of people are still struggling to get over COVID effects, and then for this to happen, and it's not just the elderly, the women and the children, we've got vulnerable adults, that there's so many categories that we need to take into consideration. Now, you mentioned after the cricket match, that's something I'm going to come back to, because I do want to talk about that particular scenario, situation, so shall we say. So moving on to Yasmin. Yasmin, for those people who do not know what Federation of Muslim Organisation is, can you quickly tell us what it is and what you do?
Of course. And Zainab, thank you for starting off as you did, because that actually encapsulates Leicester, that we welcome people in from wherever they are, and people who come here feel like it's their home. So the Federation of Muslim Organisations is an umbrella organisation across Leicester and parts of Leicestershire, and we have affiliates, approximately 200 affiliates. They're made up of mosques, masjids, charities, educational institutions, quite a large affiliate base. And we try to kind of reflect and the voice of the Muslims, particularly in policy areas. And to support where we can. So by and large, that's what it is. I'm going to walk and talk because I'm about to board.
No worries. If I can then move on to Aasiya. Now, Aasiya, I must admit, I have heard of the Green Party, but I don't know enough about it. So for our listeners, are you able to just briefly explain what the Green Party is and what you stand for?
Yeah, I'd love to. The Green Party is founded in the 1970s and used to be called the Ecology Party. So that tells you, that encapsulates it, yeah? It's based on caring for the environment and then the kind of things that lead out from that. Social justice, caring for the vulnerable, an economy which benefits everybody, not just a few people at the expense of others, and in a way that is sustainable for generations.
Sure.
So its ethos is something that has aligned with my values since I was about 14.
Well, I can see you've certainly worn the colour to match your party because you're wearing a green scarf today, so well done for representing. In terms of, so your area is North Evington, and I have made some notes on this. So that covers Uppingham Road, Spinney Hill Park area, Humberston Road, Humberston Park area, and Green Lane Road. Right. How has this situation, and I really don't like calling it anything else because it was extreme violence that we've suffered through. So I am going to call it this situation because I don't know how else to actually put it. So forgive me for those who think that it can be put in better ways, but to me, this is the only way I can currently put it without offending anyone. So this situation, how has it affected your the people who are in your ward?
Yeah. Myself, I kind of tend to be proactive, smile at people, greet them, say hello, please, thank you, in kind of loud terms. However, when I'm not talking to people, from what I observe, the streets are quieter and people speak in a softer way. This is an area I grew up in. I'm local, I went to school there, my family lived there. So it's an area I know really well and I care about very much, which is why I stood as the candidate. And to me, the shift in attitude where perhaps there is more fear and less trust, we really need to seek understanding between the different communities and kind of work with all parties to rebuild community.
Absolutely. I mean, it's everyone's responsibility at the end of the day. It just doesn't fall on the elders, contrary to what some people may think. And it also doesn't fall on the children of our next generation to come. It's everybody. We all live here. It's a bit like our house. We all live in the house. It's all of our responsibilities to maintain it, to clean it, to ensure it's, worthy living in.
Yeah.
It thrives, exactly. So moving on to the actual violence that's ensued. And I've got facts, and then I've got myths, and I've got things circulating on social media, and then I've got things debunking stuff that was made, and to the point that it's getting ridiculous now. So I'm going to first of all start off with, let's start at the beginning, okay? Now, the biggest myth is, and Rita Patel mentioned it just slightly, that a lot of things happen after the cricket match. Now, I've done a lot of research into this. Now, from what I've found, all of this had actually started before the cricket match. There was actually I've got a timeline just here in front of me. I'm just going to go back to one particular time. I have a feeling, or I have heard, that the timeline goes beyond May 22nd of 2022. But the timeline I've got in front of me is the timeline I'm going to go by. So on May 22nd, a Muslim teenager was beaten up by 30 or more Hindus with bats and poles late at night in an unprovoked attack and hospitalized. Now, bearing in mind, this is May 22nd, this is months before the cricket match. So it goes on to say that he ran to his friend's house, his friend's parents were also beaten, the house smashed, and so on and so forth. Police were obviously called. Not much action was taken immediately, shall we say. It took a while, right? So, Rita, would you mind answering this question, because you mentioned the cricket match? The biggest debunk I really want to sort out today is the fact this did not happen because of the cricket match. We've had plenty of cricket matches in the past, India versus Pakistan, and as an Indian myself, I know, because I used to go to every single match that ever happened between India and Pakistan, or India versus England and so on. I know this has never happened before. So can we get some facts out there? Am I correct in what I am reading?
I think you're absolutely right. I think the cricket match was just a flashpoint in a continuum that started long before.
A catalyst.
And I think there's been a lot of people in the community who've been very angry that on previous occasions that led up to all of this situation, lots of people have been angry that the police didn't take as quicker action and as firmer action as they needed to. But with all things, when you look at things in hindsight, you can see, if you join up all the dots, you can see that actually, had we all been privy to the information, because a lot of the information I found out after the major events had occurred, like a lot of people, but had we shared that information with each other across communities, I think we could have headed off some of the more violent stuff that's happened after that. And I think what this teaches me, and I would say other people, is that actually when things happen, we need to share that information quickly, and we need to get it resolved quickly and not let it fester so that it escalates into the situation.
Well, similar to very similar to interagency communication, isn't it, in certain legal sectors? I mean, as a lawyer, that's how I'm going to be thinking. So it's all about that communication. Now, let's discuss Independence Day celebrations. Independence Day celebrations have been happening for years and years and years. We have never, again, had this kind of situations or incidents. Would you, and I suppose you've already kind of said this, but let me hear from Yasmin on this one. The cricket match was a massive catalyst that happened. Now, what I believe, and I'm sure there's a lot of people would agree with me, is that we are reading what the media wants us to read. It's the spin and the narrative that the media has given. What are we, or what is FMO or other Muslim organizations doing to tackle the narrative that's already been spun by the media? Yasmin, are you able to answer that?
Yes, I think one of the key things is that we're trying to say to people, only share what's factual, because I think there's so much inaccuracy and unfactual reports that have taken place that have just simply fueled some of this violence, as you put it, that has gone on. And in fact, in doing so, has invited or allowed other people from outside the city who have no interest in Leicester to come in and add, to the violence. And sadly, that's what we saw play out the.
Okay, so we seem to be losing Yasmin because she is currently boarding a plane on her way back from, I suppose it was a meeting or something that she had. One of the other myths that I've read, I take that back. One of the other situations I had read was a lot of people.
What's going on?
Oh, sorry, Yasmin. We had actually lost you there for quite a while, so I carried on talking. So what I was saying was one of the items that I had read recently in the news was that a lot of the violence that had taken place in this situation had occurred by individuals who were not from Leicester, who were actually from out of Leicester. And we've seen various videos circulating. Most of it is actually found to be true, so it's not false that's been circulating. So that just goes to show it's another factor that shows us that people in Leicester can live in harmony. We do live in harmony. Now, in terms of, I did mention India and Pakistan, but I did elaborate on the Independence Day. Now, the reason why I mentioned it is because there had been a lot of things that I heard about what had happened with a rise in the celebration. So one of the things I've heard is that a lot of a few Hindus, shall I say, because I don't know how large these groups were, they celebrated by going outside the local mosques and horning quite loudly. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this, and again, I mean absolutely no offense to anybody, but I've been seeing a lot of videos circulating of the Muslim boys jumping on temples and throwing down the Hindu flags and so on and so forth. Now, that is absolutely not on, right? Whoever's done it, you do not do it. That's it. It's as simple as that. So I have been seeing that. But at the same time, what I've been seeing, and I keep referring to what I've been seeing because obviously I'm not going to talk about what other people have seen. What I've been seeing is videos circulating saying provocative words about the Muslim people who have been doing this. And again, it's no right. There's no excuse for these people doing what they've done. But why am I not seeing anything about what the Hindus have been doing in terms of going outside the mosques, urinating is from what I've read, doing their horns and things like that. So to me, it's a case of, I feel like there's a higher power, of course, the media and the social platforms. They're spinning a story to make one biased over the other to disrupt the harmony. What can we as a community do to ensure moving forward it's a level playing field? Other than the fact that we don't share what we know is not to be true or what we don't know what to be true. But unfortunately, we live in a day and age where somebody sends a WhatsApp message, all these aunties and uncles and, little kids from school quickly share these messages. And next thing you know, within an hour or so, it's everywhere. It's global news. What can we do? Actually, I'm going to put that to Aasiya. Apologies, my guests are waiting for me to actually say who. Aasiya, could you please?
Yeah. To me, I would just come at it from my experience as a teacher and a mother. I want my children to grow up somewhere safe. So that's what I want for the youth in my constituency and beyond. And as a teacher, in all the schools I've taught, I look at the child and its future. I don't look at the child's religion. Yeah. So that sense of if these fault lines existed, which it seems they did, I think it's really, really important that we try to understand the kind of history, but come at it from a kind of position of really wanting to understand rather than widen the fault lines. Does that make sense? So our motivation should be to seek understanding for what happened and in the way it did, and why we were so easily able to be kind of prey to people coming in from outside who perhaps had a different agenda.
Who found it really quick to actually come in between the harmony that existed.
Right.
Absolutely, I agree. Now, you touched upon the history, and there's something that I've realized as I'm continuing with the show at the moment, is that I've used the word Hindus quite a bit. And I think it's quite important that I clarify something at this point. Now, we're talking about Hindus, but it's not just the Hindus. It's like anything, like any religion, you have your fanatics, you have your radicalists. So when we're talking about the Hindus, I've got loads of amazing, absolutely amazing Hindu friends. They would never think about doing anything like this to any race or religion, not just the Muslims.
Zainab, can I come in there?
Yeah.
I'm really glad you've said that, because what I'm really keen to get across, and I know everybody is working hard on this, is not about a Hindu-Muslim community issue. This is a very small group of a minority within a minority.
And that's what I was going to say is we need to explain.
Have, as I said, allowed other people to come in and take advantage of the situation.
Yep.
Who have a different agenda and a different ideology, possibly. So we want to make it clear that, as Hindus and Muslims for years and years, we've lived together,
Absolutely.
we've worked together, we've shared the same struggles, and we continue to do so. We need to be in perspective, but we need to also understand that there's other things at play here that potentially are very damaging to our city.
Absolutely. And one of the, what I was going to touch upon there was that this minority that this violence is escalating from, they are known as the Hindutwas. So I know I've been saying Hindus, and if there are listeners out there, I do not want you to feel that I'm categorizing you. So please, it's not that, but it's the way of identification. Now, like I said, it's not about Muslim or Hindu. We've got the Muslim boys who have done this, to the Mandir flags. From what we know, the person who did this to the Mandir, the flag, has not been identified as to whether or not it is a Muslim or a Hindu. So right now, we actually don't know who it is. And I'm hoping, and we can hope that the police, through the investigations, locate the person who's done that, and a suitable punishment is brought upon the person. Me as a lawyer, I look for justice. That's one of the things I'm going to be looking at. Now, you mentioned Aasiya. As a teacher, you don't look at the person's history. You don't look at their race or religion. As a lawyer, we are the same. You are there to defend your client no matter what the background, no matter what they've done. And then you are there to ensure that justice is delivered, to make sure that if there's injustice being done, then that's balanced out as well. And we can only hope that everybody feels the same way. I'm going to slightly move on a little bit, if I can move the page on my screen. So we then move on. So we've discussed the cricket match. Now, there was a catalyst that happened there. Rita, I'm hoping that you'd be able to confirm or debunk whether this is the case. I read that one of the catalysts that happened at the cricket match was afterwards, when Pakistan lost, India won. The group, this small section of people, went on to Belgrave Road, Melton Road as we call it, and they were chanting death to Pakistan. And during this chant, a Sikh man was attacked by those people, from what I've read, defending the Muslims, and the police are aware of this. Now, is that correct in what I'm reading?
Actually, I can't confirm whether it's correct or not, because I've heard conflicting information, and this has been part of the whole scenario of what's been happening, which is that information is put out on social media. Then, we're trying to verify whether that's accurate, the way in which it's been portrayed. Police have been trying to look into particular instances and then put out accurate information, by which time social media's already got taken hold of the story and has presented information. I do believe that actually the cricket match, it was just that particular day, it was just an excuse. It was nothing to do with the cricket match. It has been to do with, as has been said before, a minority of a minority have got whether they've been egged on by extremist attitudes and extremist ideology, I don't know whether in that instance that was the case, but wherever there is extremist ideology, it doesn't matter whether it's in the Hindu community or any other community, I think it's not desirable in our community. It does not belong in any fair and just society. So I think we all have to. An affront against one community is an affront against everybody. And one of the things that, in talking about these issues that Yasmin said, on another program that we were doing together, which has really struck me. She said, my community as Muslims, we have suffered because someone somewhere on the other side of the world, in the name of our faith, did something that a lot of us found objectionable. But as a result of that, for decades, we've ended up as a community apologizing and, all being judged as if we're all guilty of what was done at that stage. And she said, as a woman, what I want to do is I want to ensure that no other community has to go through this. So I would appeal to all communities. If you see extremism in your community, whether it's Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, whatever it may be, we collectively need to work towards rooting it out, because actually, as she said, I don't want any other communities to have to go through what we're going through. And wouldn't it be better if we can root it out well before it finds any kind of a critical mass? And I think young people, the things that have happened in Leicester, I think have happened because of a number of reasons. And, we've always felt that Leicester has been a harmonious city, and I don't see why it can't continue to be a harmonious city. I don't believe in all the rot that is being put out there. But we became a little bit complacent. We thought because it was always like that it was always going to be like that. And when you start to think like that, you take your eye off the ball, and you don't continue to make the efforts that we need to in order to make sure that we have the communication, in order to make sure that we continue to build that cohesion within our communities. And I think so we got called short. There were these ideologies coming from the outside, preying on young minds. We've taken, because the City Council has lost 150 million a year on year from government grant. We've stopped a lot of the youth and community work that we used to do. A lot of the youngsters used to get a lot of support. We would have spotted these things happening way before if we had all the youth workers and community development work we used to do. So all of those things that helped communities, helped young people to understand what wasn't right, where they were vulnerable and they were being taken advantage of. All the structures have gone, and or most of them have gone. And what's now happened is that they've been preyed upon. Some of those young people have been preyed upon. And then there are other people, people have said to me, actually, it's nothing to do with Hindus or Muslims. It's just a group of thugs. And
Absolutely.
It makes no difference whether they're Hindus or Muslims. They're thugs, and we don't want them in our community.
Apologies, but can I just stop you there? I agree with what you've said, but there's two things that I wanted to just highlight before it goes completely up my head, as it does when you're on the radio. One thing that I have noticed is that our Muslim leaders and the Hindu leaders came out to condemn. Now, from what I know about this group, they are known as the Hindutwas. What I don't know, and that's my lack of knowledge and my lack of awareness, is whether the Hindutwas are the same as the RSS, or they're a separated version, or is it, are they one and the same, or are they different? That's one of the things I don't know. But why has somebody, a representative of the Hindutwas, not come out and condemned? But we're not here to talk about that, but that is something that's been floating around in my mind. The other thing as well that you mentioned is that we as a community need to root it out. And this goes back to the point I was saying earlier, it's all of our responsibilities. But unfortunately, in May, back when all of this had happened, so I'm going back a bit, Muslims, and not just Muslims, from what I know, it was people in the community who was seeing all of these issues occur by these group of people, did raise this with the police, and the police did absolutely nothing. Now, the same people who did raise it at those times probably don't want to raise it again because they know the police aren't going to be doing anything, or they know they can't do anything. There's a lot of red tape. We know that. I'm not here to bash the police. The police have done an absolutely amazing job at certain times, and certain times they could have done a lot better. Whether that's because they've not got the money to put towards police officers. My own cousin, my own niece is a police officer. So I'm not here to bash them. But what I am here to say is, unfortunately, there's been a lot of police inaction and a lot of things that hasn't been done when it should have been done. And maybe we could have avoided this. But, hindsight is an absolutely beautiful thing. We have had a question based on what I've just asked. And bear with me, Aasiya. I am going to ask this of Rita. And only because you may know Rita. If you don't, then please let me know and I can move on to Aasiya. Are you able to educate us if RSS and Hindutva is different or the same? It's very similar to what I touched upon a few seconds ago.
Okay. Truth is, I've been in Leicester since I was 7 years old. So I've grown up in this country. And of course, we have relatives in India and that, but I don't know enough about the history of the RSS and Hindutva, and I don't know enough about the politics in India, current politics in India, to be able to comment on that. I have been doing research recently myself because the Hinduism that I have been taught by my parents and that I practice doesn't have any room for. In fact, I was talking to another woman this afternoon, and she was saying, this is so abhorrent to Hinduism. Any right-thinking person in Hinduism, it isn't about extremist ideas. In fact, it's a question of love, live, and let live. So I don't know where this is coming from. And I think we have to be careful that faith isn't confused with political ideologies.
You've hit the nail on the head there, Rita.
Mixed up, and that's where it gets dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, Muslims, unfortunately, I'm sure there were certain times where Hindus and Christians can be blamed for things that were not them. It was the radicalists, the fundamentalists, a small minority of people who have done something, and everyone's been blamed for it. I'm going to move on to Aasiya now. Aasiya, in terms of the constituency, and I know you're up for, you've got an upcoming election next week. If, touch wood, inshallah, let's say, you are elected, what can you do if you are elected in terms of what's been happening?
I'm new to politics, but excited. So I'll be seeking expertise and alliance building to make sure that this sort of thing belongs in our past. In terms of the Green Party, we have 54 councillors, vast majority of them are Labour. So it'll be really lovely to have a Green in the room, holding them to account. And I'm looking forward to taking North Evington views to the council and saying, this is what my constituents want, this is what they need.
But people have to speak up.
People do have to speak up.
Absolutely.
And I was, really struck me what Rita was saying about young people and cuts to youth services, because I know as a teacher that young people look for cohesion and belonging, and often they find that from communities online, which do them a major disservice. They have one emotional need met, but there's exploitation. So I'll be looking, to me, things like Visit My Mosque Days. I think faith-based institutions need to be a lot more proactive and reaching out to one another.
Can I just interrupt there, though?
Yeah.
I'm a big believer it's not just sticking to your own faith. All of our children, all of our generation has to be educated on all the religions out there. Islam teaches us that as well. Islam says do no harm, but Islam also says you have to know about every single faith out there. You have to live in cohesion with each other.
As a supply teacher, I used to work in schools with a Hindu majority, a Muslim majority, white working class, and I'd come home and go, when are these children going to talk to each other? When are they going to get to know about how beautiful it is to be different?
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me very quickly of a story. I'm going off narrative here. Me, my husband, and my younger daughter, we went France a couple of years ago now. We've been a few times. I took her to see Notre Dame Church, the cathedral. And we were inside and we were walking. And of course, as soon as you look at me, you know I'm not, Christian. You know I'm not white in speech marks. I hate using that term, but I prefer Caucasian. So one of the cathedral staff members quickly ran over and she said, "Oh, hello," in her French accent. I'm not even going to attempt it right now. And she started asking us where we were from and what we're doing here, how long we're here. And I told her we're Muslims, because she saw me pointing to Jesus and the artwork at the top, and me explaining to my daughter. And she goes, "Oh, what are you doing in our cathedral? Why are you here?" So I explained to her, well, Christianity and Islam are very similar if you look at the original Bible, the original text. And we've got very similar prophets and similar stories, and I'm educating my daughter. She was absolutely shocked, and I was shocked that she was shocked.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that the narrative that's constantly spun is not exactly in our favor. It's always biased. I actually wanted to ask Yasmin a few questions about FMO and what FMO has to say about all of this, but she's now on the plane, so we have lost her.
We're about to fly, but I just quickly want to say before I sign off, is look, none of our faiths teaches us extremism and hate. However, it's very easy for those that want to divide us to use religion, because it's so emotive, as a way of seeping into our communities. And these people are vulnerable. You can probably hear the cabin crew. We've got vulnerable people who, because of this emotion around religion, are being sucked into this. And as we said before, stripping out of services, people, relying on online stuff, social media, is really dangerous. So, I just want to make that point that my religion doesn't teach us hate extremism. I don't believe any other religion does. And that's, what we've got to try and get across, notwithstanding, as we said before, we have to acknowledge.
Okay, so we seem to have lost Rita there. She was on the plane and she did... Sorry? Yasmin. Oh, I'm so sorry. This show is getting to me because I am on my tippy toes making sure I do not say anything that offends anyone. So my brain cells are currently working on overdrive. I do apologize. Honestly, I think I'm going to get...
yourself.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to get a beating after this from my producer if I still survive. We seem to have lost Yasmin because she is on the plane flying back. I wasn't actually aware she was still with us because she was not on my screen. So Yasmin, what I did hear from what she said at the beginning was that none of our religions teach us extremism or violence, and that's absolutely 100%. It doesn't. It teaches us harmony. It teaches us cohesion. Teaches us to, well, I can't speak for other religions, but what I can speak for Islam is charity starts at home, and love thy neighbor, which I know is in Christianity as well. Rita, you might have to educate me when it comes to the Hindu principles. Very similar, exactly. And that's, that's how we've all lived for so many, many years, and hopefully we will continue to. Now, Rita, I asked Aasiya if she's elected, what can she do for her constituents? But you have been a councillor for 11 years for your ward. What have you been doing in relation to everything that's been going on? Because there has been a lot of discussion about the inactions of the police or some of the actions. So what I want to know is, what actions have you been able to take, given the red tape that you probably come across as well?
I think on this specific issue, alongside the 6 wards that were directly affected, i.e. Stonygate, Wycliffe, Spinney, Belgrave, Rushmead, North Evington. We've been talking to the city mayor about the need for clear leadership, the need for more resources to be invested in the kind of things that I've said, the need to get a clear narrative based on evidence, not on conjecture, not on social media, but clear evidence, and for a joint leadership. It's not enough, because we feel very strongly, the councillors involved in those 6 wards, we felt very strongly that actually we were there on the ground as things were happening, but we also wanted to ensure that the city council, in terms of the city mayor, was out there representing the city council as a whole, working with the chief constable in order to deal with the issues as they arose. And I think that, there is a narrative going on that says, Leicester used to be fantastic and harmonious, and it isn't now. I don't buy into that rubbish. I think it is rubbish. I think the majority of people in Leicester still want to live together in harmony, still want to work together and create success. My vision, and this is what I work for, my vision of the city is one that is built on unity amongst the people of this city, that we create success and we become a beacon for the world of how diverse communities from all over the globe, from different parts of the globe, can live together, create success together and create harmony, so that we can be the best that we can be as humanity, work on the level of humanity. And I do believe the majority of people that I talk to, not just in my ward, but across the city and stuff, that they want that, whether it's white working class, whether it's Asian people, whether it's African Caribbean people, that's what they want.
Thank you very much for that, Rita. For those who are probably just tuning in right now, you're on Ramadan FM Breaking Stereotypes with Rita, Patel, Aasiya, Bora, and we did have Yasmin Surti in Leicester. We are one to discuss the recent situation in incidents, or shall we say violence that ensued recently in Leicester. And we have debunked quite a few myths. There's one that I also wanted to just touch upon, which was the march that happened on Green Lane Road. Now, unfortunately, that march, I've never seen anything like it before. Full of men, from what I could see, marching through Green Lane Road, past some of our mosques, chanting, wearing balaclavas, brandishing weapons. Now, I know, Rita and Aasiya, you are not representative of the police, but I do feel that the community was let down on that afternoon, that day, whenever it happened. What are the guarantees or assurances have you in your meetings with the local authority, with the police? Has it been discussed that this should not happen again? I'm going to take it to Aasiya. Aasiya, I know you said you're new to politics. I'm just wondering whether any of these discussions have taken place.
Between myself and the police, not yet. But I'm really happy to work with everybody. And I think it's incredibly important that we create a culture where people are courageous enough to be transparent. And if mistakes have been made, that they own them. And that way, you encourage other people to own that. Does that make sense? Where
Yeah.
You create a culture where dialogue is the norm. You go back, you are introspective, you reflect and learn something and move forward. And the police need to do that. They're human beings as much as anybody.
Brilliant. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Aasiya. Rita, with your long-standing councillor role, are you able to shed a bit more light on this situation?
The issue has been brought up in every meeting that I've been to, whether it's been with community members, whether it's been just councillors and the executive. This issue has been brought up at every juncture, with the police, without the police in the meetings, that had the police acted quicker on that day, they could have headed off that march going to Green Lane Road. Now, the police say that they didn't have enough manpower because there were police officers who had to be sent to London because of the Queen having died, but also for 3 weeks previous to that, they say no police officers had been allowed to have any time off, and they had to work long shifts because of the problems that had occurred. So that particular day was, and this is what I've been told, that particular day was the first time when police were allowed some leave, and that's why there weren't enough police on the ground. And so whoever they had on the ground at that time, they tried to do the best that they could with what they had. Now, whatever the ins and outs of the situation was, had the group of people who marched there been stopped earlier, then maybe we wouldn't have had all the stuff that's happened after that. So that's a fact. Secondly, I think people have said to me, including an imam and also a scholar, a Muslim scholar, have said to me, tell me what the significance of them chanting Sri Ram, etc. was. And I've said, it's like anything. The Sri Ram in itself is actually in praise of Lord Ram. But if you use it in the context of a threatening mob going around with, weapons and things, or, going around and in the kind of it wasn't a peaceful protest. It was a kind of protest that, really made people feel fearful. Then whatever you're chanting, that is going to be seen as, something that's very threatening. And so I can understand that people were really frightened of it. What can we do from that? I think, you're right, that police have to learn from this situation. You can't ever allow that kind of thing to happen again. I know that police have felt that they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. But, a number of us find ourselves in those positions on occasions. And you have to do the best that you can in that situation. And I'm not sure whether, I've seen and heard that 1 or 2 police cars blocking roads managed to stop things getting worse in other situations. I'm not sure that, there weren't other things that could have been done. But we are where we are. There's no point continuing to go over history. But you can be sure that people haven't just accepted, it was a mistake and, we have to forget about it. Nobody's forgetting about it. Everybody wants to understand what the truth of what happened was, and they want to be part of the solution. They want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And can I just say one last thing, which is that, I do believe these issues that are arising can be resolved between us through dialogue, between communities. And I do believe that women and girls need to be part of those discussions and stuff. And often, we're not around the table when these discussions are going on. Of course, we have the counsellors who are representing, but we're not always around the table in community settings, community organisations, religious organisations, etc. And, women are the ones who raise children, who pick up what's going on with youngsters, and they need to be able to channel that information and also be recognized as people who end up dealing with the aftermath of what happens in communities, whether it's with young men or whether it, is on a wider basis. Extremism definitely doesn't belong in our communities, certainly not in Leicester. And I think we all need to be working towards that together.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rita, for that. One of the things I was going to ask you towards the end was, is there anything that you'd like to say to the listeners out there as your closing statement? So I appreciate that, Rita. And Aasiya, I'll come on to you for in a moment regarding that. We have about 2 minutes on the clock. Very quickly, I just wanted to pick up on Rita's point about women being around the table. Now, as a lawyer, I work in an industry that's still very much male dominated, especially in partnerships and higher management and so on and so forth. And it's not just the men that is at fault here, in the sense that it's not the men that invite the women or don't invite the women. Women sometimes don't put their hands up, don't put their feet forward. And I'm going to go back to my listeners and remind them that as a Muslim woman, I ride a motorbike. And yes, I'm 40 now. I turned 40 a month ago, and I'm 40 and I've got 4 children and I'm a Muslim, and I ride a motorbike. And why not? End of. Why not? But it's only because I put my foot forward. I defied mostly everybody. My mum and dad are only just getting used to it after 8 years of riding. So women need to step up. And it is really a woman thing, where the woman thinks, I can't do it, or if I do it, I'll be told off, or no, I'm the only one doing it. I can't be the one doing it. I'm the only one. We need that confidence, and women need to build up other women. Women need to encourage other women. So it's not just up to the men as well. It's up to us as females. As like you said, Rita, we are the ones who raise our children. By default, we raise our children, and we are the ones who do need to step up. So very quickly, Aasiya, we've got about 50 seconds on the clock. If you can, in about 30 seconds, have a closing statement that you wish to put out.
I don't have a statement, but as a former English teacher, I have a story. Not a former English teacher, yeah, still a teacher. So we travelled in the 90s from Mumbai to Chennai. My father's family from Mumbai, and we were in a sort of settlement, and my father looked at the houses, at the doors. On one was Allah, on the other one was then Allah, then then Allah. My father looked at them, and he had tears in his eyes. He said, "This was the Bombay of my childhood. But now it's not there anymore. We live separately now. But when I was a boy, we were living as one.
MashaAllah.
You know.
Just goes to show we are harmonious together. So was this recently that you went back?
No, it was back in the 90s. My father passed away.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saying that's my heritage, and that's what I want to bring to.
Brilliant.
That's what I want to remind
Well,
everybody.
I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you so very much for joining Breaking Stereotypes with your host, Zainab Zaeem-Sattar. We'll